Hi everyone, it's TheTidesChanging here, and welcome to another Sims 4 speed build. Today I'm making a 3-sim starter home that I've named a small start, and since this is a starter home for 3 sims, it was made on a 24,000 simoleon budget rather than a 20,000 simoleon one. And I decided to do this because it was requested a little while ago that I made a starter home for a small family, and I did like the idea of having an extra 4,000 simoleons to work with. But I will do more single sim starter homes in the future. I just really wanted to try out doing a 3-sim one, having more of a budget to work with. I made this house one night when I was in a mood to build, but I wanted to work on something that I could just finish in one sitting, because sometimes I want to build, but then I don't want to start on something that's going to take a week or two or longer to finish. You know, I just want to go in, work on something for an hour or two, and then have something finish at the end. So I decided a starter house was the best way to do that, and this house took me about a little over an hour to make. I went for a very cozy and traditional look for this house, and I really do like how it turns out. I also like the thing that I did in the back there with putting a single window in between 2 shutter windows to make it look like they all have shutters. And this house is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, so it is perfect for if you just want to start the game off with a couple and a child rather than just a single sim. This is something that you can just download and throw them in, and it has everything that they need. Although one thing it is lacking on is skill building items. It's got a bookshelf, but then other than that, it doesn't have a chess table or an easel or anything like that. But once your Sims start working, they can easily afford that. This house will drain their budget though, because it was about 50 simoleons short of 24,000 simoleons, so it's not going to leave them with a whole lot of money, and you will have to put them in the cheapest neighborhood in Willow Creek for them to be able to afford this house right off the bat. But it still is a nice looking neighborhood. And I also used brick on the exterior, which isn't something I normally do. Usually I use siding, or I use a combination of siding and brick, but mostly siding. But I really do love the cozy look that the brick gives, and I also used black shutters, which I think worked really well with the brick. I also think this home has potential for expansion, like if you move your Sims into it and then they outgrow it and you want to add on to a bit, like you could pretty easily put a second floor onto it or expand it out in the back a little bit. So I think it's a house that you can keep your Sims in for a good bit of time. Now I'm moving on to the landscaping though, and what I did with this house was I actually started on the landscaping and I did a little bit of it. Like I put the rock path out here in the front, and then I also stuck a tree along the side here, and I believe a few other plants. Like I just did a little bit of the landscaping. And then I thought about it, I was like, maybe I should just go in and do some of the interior and then continue the landscaping, because I didn't want to blow all the money on the exterior of the house and then have only a few thousand simoleons left over for the interior. So I kind of went back and forth between the interior and the exterior a bit, just trying to make sure I did everything the best I could with the budget that I had. Because as I said in the last budget build that I did, it is a challenge to furnish a home with a budget in mind and actually have it still look decent. But right now, I'm just working on the floor plan in the common area a little bit. So originally I was going to have the kitchen and all of that, you know, the living room and the dining area and all of that be open, but then I decided to just go for more of a closed off look. Like, I wanted to give this house a slightly dated appearance, like with older appliances, and I know those are the modern cabinets, but they are the cheapest ones, so I personally think they're a little bit dated looking, and I mean, I did have to use dated looking stuff because that is the cheapest stuff, and if I used the more expensive appliances, then it would make the house very expensive. But as your Sims get more money, they can always upgrade the appliances and furniture and all of that in this house and make it look a little bit better, so it's something that they can work towards. Even though this is a small home, the kitchen actually is really big. And on a somewhat random note, I've been watching Property Brothers, which is an HGTV show on Netflix lately, and for some reason this kitchen sort of reminds me of it, like talking about how it's dated but has a good bit of space. Because on that show, it's about 2 twin brothers. One of them's a realtor, one of them is a contractor. So the realtor will show people these really dated homes that are just hideous but have good layouts, and then the contractor will renovate whichever one they choose. But in the show, they're always saying, oh, just look past how ugly everything is and look at the space instead. Not saying that this house is ugly, but, you know, just how it's dated. I'm sure if this house was on the show, it wouldn't meet the approval of whoever was looking at, especially the kitchen. Because it seems like everyone who's on the show, they want granite countertops and they want stainless steel appliances, which this kitchen does not have, so they probably complain about being gross looking. They probably would also want to knock down the walls going into the living room and make it open concept and have an counter island. As you can see, I've watched the show a good bit, but just seems like that's always what people want, so I'm sure this house wouldn't meet the approval of the people who are usually on the show. But getting back to what I'm doing right now, I am working on the living room, and I did make sure to add window coverings in here because whenever I do budget homes, I try to put in window coverings if I can. Like, I make it a priority to include them because I just feel like they really make the rooms feel a lot more complete. Like, rooms just feel sort of naked without them. So I guess that's sort of a tip for if you're working on starter homes, like try your best to keep window coverings in it. But there's not really a whole lot of furnishing in here, and it's all pretty simple furnishing because I didn't really have a whole lot of simoleons to work with. So I did make sure to add in a few decorations here and there so it didn't look completely bare, but I just used the cheapest furniture and just kept the colors pretty simple, so it just has blue walls and white and gray furniture, but I still do think it looks pretty nice, and your Sims can always work towards upgrading the furniture and all of that. But now moving on to the bathroom, which once again is pretty simple. It's just got a shower, a sink, and a toilet, and I of course just used the cheapest plumbing in the game, and then just went for the stone floor that you see there and some nice beige walls. So now that room is done, so I'm actually moving on to the master bedroom, which is pretty big. Like, the bedrooms in this house are actually pretty big, so you possibly could fit in a family with 2 children into this house. Like, you could probably, if you rearrange things in the children's bedroom a bit, you probably could fit 2 beds in there. It'd be a little bit cramped, but I do think it would work, so there is a good bit of potential with this house. But I had a bit of trouble when figuring out the furnishing in this bedroom. Originally, I wanted to have a red wall, so I tried putting up the wallpaper first and then finding a bed that matched it, but when I was looking at just the cheapest double bed, I couldn't really find a sheet for it that matched the walls because I didn't really like how a lot of the sheets that came with that bed looked. Because even though this is a cheap house, I didn't want it to look like it was super cheap. So first I was going for the blue bed that you see here with the blue end tables and lamps and all of that, but I did feel like that looked a little bit childish, so in the end I do change that. I also put in the mint green walls in the room here, which I really do like that color because it's very bright and I just think it looks very nice. I also added that rose rug that you see there and then went back to changing the colors. So I chose to just go for more simple and I guess mature colors because I didn't really, because like I said before, I felt like the room was just getting a little bit too childish looking. So at that point I just moved on to the kids' bedroom. I do go back to the master bedroom later on after doing the exterior because like I said, I went back and forth a little bit. Because I did have a bit of money left over after doing the exterior, so I did put that back into making things in the interior look a little bit better. But the kids' bedroom is also pretty simple. You've just got that child bed there with some posters behind that, and then I did put in a little desk area right here for them to sit at and do their homework. I did end up replacing the desk setup with a dresser and a bookshelf though, because I realized that the room did need a dresser and there's no space for it elsewhere. And plus, I think that actually made the room cheaper. Also, there weren't any bookshelves anywhere else in the house, so I figured that was a good way to get a bookshelf into the house. So if your Sims do want to read a book, they do have to go into the kids' room, but I mean, a bookshelf is a bookshelf, so that's not really a huge deal. But now moving back out to the exterior of the house and finishing up the landscaping. And as you can see, I had a couple thousand simoleons to work with, so that was a good bit of money for the landscaping, although I did, of course, have to watch what plants I placed more than I usually would, because usually I just stick plants everywhere without a care, without thinking about the price of them or anything like that. So I just added a very sparse amount of plants, but I think it was enough to make it look like the yard was still pretty well landscaped. The house also does have a very large deck out behind the house, which is really nice for eating outdoors and grilling and all of that. So I do think that that is a nice space for the house. You also have a little bit of a yard. They still have a little bit of space to put garden boxes and that type of thing into. I did change the flooring on the deck and the porch with that darker wood though. That's a little bit less rustic looking. I do think that change freshened things up a bit. It also tied in with the black color of the roof and the black on the shutters a bit as well. And right here I'm adding in a nice little a nice little table with an umbrella over it and some chairs around it, so that gives a nice bit of outdoor eating. And that is in addition to the table that is in the kitchen on the interior. So this is also a good house for parties as well. And if I haven't already, I do believe I add a grill to the outside as well. I think I did. Maybe I didn't, but for some reason I think I did. But right now I'm going back into the kitchen and trying to freshen things up a bit because I felt like the kitchen was a bit dark looking. So I just stuck some lights up on the ceiling where you couldn't see them to make it a little bit brighter. And then I did go back into the master bedroom and just make things look a little bit nicer. So I put in the next most expensive, or the next to cheapest double bed, which looks a lot nicer than the other one, so that did give this bedroom a more elegant look. And then I ended up having to replace that wardrobe that was there, and then I just stuck in this nicer dresser underneath the window because if I kept it at the foot of the bed, then Sims would not be able to get through. And I did test that, and they can still get in and try on clothes and use that and use the mirror as well. So everything works. I don't thoroughly play test my houses, but I do just play in them for a sim day or two just to make sure that the basics need to work. Although sometimes things do fall through the cracks, but usually everything works. It seems like move objects in this game does cause a lot less issues than it did in The Sims 3, which is really good. It is almost time to move on to the showcase part of the video though, and this house is of course up for download, and you can find information for that in the description below, but I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video.